It was a rainy Friday evening in Palo Alto. The clouds hung heavy, thick with a sadness that matched the quiet ache in Sundar's chest. He sat by the window of his home, staring out into the mist, a mug of warm tea, untouched in his hands, outside. The world seemed calm, but inside him, a storm was rising. He wasn't sure why he felt it, an unease, like something important was about to happen. But he had learned through years of leading teams, companies, and innovations to trust his instincts. And today they whispered that life was about to shift in a way he could not predict. His son, Arjun, only 15, had not yet come home from school. It was unusual. Sundar had raised Arjun to be punctual, responsible, grounded, despite growing up in privilege. Sundar made sure Arjun never lost touch with reality. But today, Arjun was late and his phone was off. Sundar stood, placed his tea on the windowsill, and paced the room. The fireplace cracked behind him, throwing warm light on the family portraits that lined the walls, pictures of laughter, awards, humble beginnings in India, and quiet moments of triumph. He was about to call his wife, Anjali, when the front door creaked open. His heart leapt. Arjun stepped in, soaked to the bone, his backpack sagging, his eyes tired. But it wasn't just him. Beside Arjun was another boy, maybe the same age, with a hoodie pulled tight over his head. His jeans were torn, his shoes mismatched and muddy. He smelled faintly of rain and something else, like he hadn't showered in days. "Papa," Arjun said quietly, "this is my friend Elliot. He doesn't have a place to stay." Sundar froze, not because he was angry, not because he didn't understand, but because this exact moment, was the test of everything he had taught. Arjun. Respect, kindness, resilience. "He's been sleeping behind the library," Arjun continued. "I couldn't just leave him. Please don't be mad." Sundar said nothing for a long time. He looked at Elliot, who didn't lift his eyes, and then at Arjun, whose gaze trembled but stayed strong. "Come in," Sundar said softly. The words were simple, but the meaning behind them cracked open a door that had been sealed shut for years. They went inside. Anjal. I came rushing down the stairs, worry in her voice. "Where have you been?" But she stopped when she saw Elliot. Sundar gave her a quiet nod. She understood. They were the kind of couple who didn't need to speak out loud to agree on what mattered. "I'll get towels," she said. As the boys changed into dry clothes, Sundar sat in the kitchen, heart pounding. His mind raced with questions. Who was this boy? What had happened to him? What were the risks? But deeper than the questions was something else. Memories. Memories of his own boyhood in Chennai, of growing up in a small 2-room apartment with no television, no fridge, no certainty. He remembered nights when the electricity went out and his mother lit candles while his father read the newspaper by its flickering light. He had never been homeless, but he had known the ache of not having enough. So when Elliot came into the kitchen, clean and wrapped in a soft sweater, Sundar smiled gently. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Elliot nodded. Anjal. I served warm rice and lentils, and the boy ate in silence, slowly, with the carefulness of someone who hadn't had a full meal in days. Sundar watched him, not with pity, but with curiosity. Who was this boy? What story did he carry? "Where are your parents?" Sundar asked. Finally, Elliot paused. His eyes flickered. "I don't know where my dad is," he said. "And my mom? She left a year ago. She said she'd come back." "She didn't?" Sundar felt something tighten in his chest. He looked at Arjun, who sat beside Elliot like a shield, ready to defend him with every ounce of his teenage will. There was pride in Sundar's heart, but also worry, because the world didn't always reward kindness. Sometimes it punished it. "Do you have anyone else?" Sundar asked. "No." "Where have you been staying?" "I move around. Under the bridge sometimes, behind the school." The rain outside deepened. Thunder rolled low across the hills. "You can stay here tonight," Sundar said. "But we'll need to talk in the morning." Elliot nodded out that night as the house grew quiet. Sundar lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Memories came back like old ghosts. He thought about the boy he once was, riding buses in the heat of Chennai, dreaming of computers he couldn't afford, studying under streetlights, and he wondered what would have happened if no one had ever given him a chance. The next morning came too soon. Sundar made breakfast. Elliot was quiet, polite. He helped set the table without being asked. Anjali whispered, "He's got good manners." Sundar nodded. After breakfast, he took Elliot aside. "I need to ask something hard," he said, "but I ask it with respect." Elliot looked up, eyes steady. "Have you ever been in trouble?" "Not the kind you think," Elliot said. "I've never stolen, never hurt anyone. I stopped going to school, and once a man at the park called the cops on me. Said I looked suspicious." "Were you?" "No, I was reading." Sundar almost smiled. Almost. "What were you reading?" "A book about coding. I found it in a donation bin." That was the moment something shifted. Coding. Double quotes. "What do you like about it?" Sundar asked. Elliot single quotes. S face lit up for the first time. It's like building a world that listens to you. You write the rules, you create something from nothing. Sundar leaned back, silent. He saw something in Elliot then, not just pain but brilliance. It scared him. How much it reminded him of himself. But the world didn't always reward brilliance either. "You'll stay here for a week," Sundar said. "We'll figure things out, but there are rules. No lying, no sneaking out. You go back to school." Elliot nodded. "Deal." The days passed. Something unexpected happened. Elliot became part of the house. He helped with dishes. He laughed with Arjun. He asked Sundar questions about how search engines worked, how leadership felt, what failure taught him. And Sundar, to his surprise, found himself answering. It was as if the boy had awakened a part of him that had been sleeping for years. But not everyone was as accepting. Word spread in the neighborhood. Whispers began. Some parents called. Some teachers asked questions. One evening, a neighbor stopped Sundar during his walk. "You're Sundar Pichai," the man said. "You're supposed to be smart. Why would you bring a homeless kid into your home? What if he's dangerous?" Sundar didn't respond with anger. He just said, "What if he's not?" But the doubt had been planted, and it was about to grow. One day, Elliot didn't come home. Arjun panicked. Hours passed. His phone went straight to voicemail. The sun set. And then a call came, a voice cold and firm. "This is Officer Grant. We have a boy named Elliot in custody. We need you to come to the station." Sundar and Arjun rushed out the door. The car ride was silent, except for the sound of rain starting to fall again. At the station, Elliot sat alone in a room, hands in his lap, eyes hollow. He was found trespassing on private property, the officer said. "He says he was just looking for a charger for his tablet." "We don't believe that. He has a tablet?" Sundar asked, surprised. "Yeah," the officer said. "Said someone gave it to him. Claimed he uses it to practice coding." "Can I talk to him?" Sundar asked. "Only for a minute." Inside the room, Sundar sat across from Elliot. "Tell me the truth," Sundar said quietly. "Did you take anything?" "No," Elliot said. "I went behind a tech store. I wasn't trying to steal. I just saw an outlet and thought I just wanted to finish the code I was working on. I swear." Sundar looked into his eyes, and for reasons he couldn't explain. He believed him, but belief wasn't always enough. Outside, the officer said, "Look, he's not charged, but this is a warning. Next time, he won't be lucky." As they drove home, Elliot sat silently in the back seat. And Sundar knew this story was far from over, because someone else had heard about the incident. Someone who did not have good intentions. And the next twist would change everything. Asterisk the night after they brought Elliot home from the station. The silence in the house was louder than ever. The rain had stopped, but a heaviness lingered in the air, like the storm had only moved from the sky into their hearts. Sundar sat at the edge of his bed, staring down at the floor with his elbows on his knees, fingers steepled under his chin. He had spent the last few hours talking to Arjun, who defended Elliot with a kind of fire Sundar hadn't seen in him before. It wasn't just loyalty. It was something deeper conviction. Arjun believed in Elliot, and he believed Sundar should. But belief wasn't always simple, especially when doubt starts to creep in like smoke under a door in his mind. Sundar kept replaying the officer's voice. Calm, clinical, almost dismissive. He's not charged, but next time he won't be lucky. It wasn't just a warning, it was a verdict waiting to happen. The kind of thing people say when they've already decided who someone is. Even before they know the whole story, Sundar had lived long enough to understand the weight of perception. He had fought battles in boardrooms and public opinion, often not for what he had done, but for what people thought he might do. And now, Elliot, a boy with no home, no safety net, and no second chances, was carrying that same burden. That night, Elliot didn't eat dinner. He sat in the guest room with the door half shut, staring at his tablet, the screen dim and cracked. Sundar passed by the door once and paused. Elliot didn't look up. He just kept typing, slow and careful, as if his fingers were trying to build something solid out of all the pieces life had broken. Sundar moved on without saying anything. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to reach across the growing distance. And maybe in some quiet corner of his heart, he was afraid of caring too much. The next morning, the house woke to a strange quiet. The usual rhythm of breakfast, morning news, and soft conversations was replaced by silence. Arjun had already left for school early, leaving only a note on the fridge. I believe in him. Please don't give up. Elliot came down late, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He looked thinner. Older somehow. And JL. I served him oatmeal, gently, without a word. Sundar watched from across the table. You don't have to keep me here, Elliot said suddenly, not looking up. I can go back to the bridge. I'd been fine before. Sundar folded his hands. Is that what you want? No, Elliot said, after a pause. But it's what I'm used to. That doesn't mean it's what you deserve, Sundar replied. A flicker passed across Elliot's face. A crack in the wall he had built around himself. You remind me of someone, Sundar said quietly. Someone I used to be. Elliot looked up then, eyes narrowing slightly. Back in India, Sundar continued, we had very little. No fridge, no phone. But we had something else: discipline, hope, and a mother who believed I could be more than what our world expected of. And me, Elliot said nothing. But Sundar saw his fingers tighten around the spoon. What are you building on your tablet? Sundar asked, changing the subject. Elliot hesitated. A game. Kind of. It's more like a puzzle. Each level teaches you something about logic. If you fail, it resets. But if you get it right, it shows you how the code behind it works. Sundar was stunned. You're coding that? Yeah. Elliot shrugged like it was no big deal. I'd taught myself Python. Then some HTML and JS. I download tutorials when I can get Wi-Fi. Who gave you the tablet? Sundar asked. A teacher. Before I dropped out, she said I was smart, said not to waste it. Why did you drop out? Elliot looked away. Because smart doesn't pay for food? The silence returned, heavier now. Sundar wanted to say something, to offer comfort or wisdom. But he also knew that sometimes silence was its own kind of listening. The next few days brought a fragile kind of normalcy. Elliot went back to school, shadowing Arjun. The teachers were cautious but curious. Some welcomed him. Others were less subtle in their skepticism. The principal scheduled a meeting with Sundar and Anjali, warning them gently but firmly that any incident involving Elliot could reflect on the school's reputation. He's a bright boy, the principal admitted. But this is Silicon Valley. People have expectations. Sundar smiled politely. So do I, he said. And mine include giving people a chance. That night, Sundar found Elliot on the porch, watching the stars. Why do you stay out here? So much? He asked. Elliot shrugged. I like the sky. It makes everything feel smaller, like my problems aren't as big. Do you ever miss your mom? Sundar asked. The question hung in the air for a long time. Every day, Elliot said softly. She wasn't perfect, but she tried. Before she left, she said something I never forgot. What was it? She said, "Don't let the world decide who you are. You decide who you are." Sundar nodded. She was right. The next week brought something unexpected. An email from a man named Liam Roberts. "Dear Mar Pichai," it read, "I hope this finds you well. I am the director of a local private shelter and outreach program. I've recently become aware of a boy named Elliot Thorne, whom your son has taken in. I know this because someone reported him, not out of concern, but out of suspicion. I believe Elliot has a history with one of our former volunteers, and I believe you may be in danger." Sundar stared at the message, his mind spinning. Danger? He immediately called Arjun home and showed him the email. Arjun's face went pale. This has to be a mistake. Elliot's not dangerous. He's never hurt anyone. I believe that, Sundar said, but we need to know more. We need to understand his past before it catches up with him or with us. They arranged a meeting with Liam the next day. The shelter was a small, quiet building tucked behind a community center. Liam was a soft-spoken man with tired eyes and a calm voice. He welcomed them into his office and offered tea. Elliot stayed here once, he began, for about 2 weeks. He was respectful, smart, kept to himself. But there was a problem? What kind of problem? Sundar asked. Liam sighed. One of our volunteers, a man named Jared, got too involved. Started giving Elliot gifts. Attention. We found out Jared had been reported before at another shelter. Nothing ever proven, but we removed him immediately. Did he hurt Elliot? Arjun asked, his voice shaking. We don't know, Liam said. Elliot never said anything. He just left one night and didn't come back. A cold silence fell over the room. We've tried to reach him since, Liam continued. But we don't have legal guardianship, and Elliot doesn't trust easily. Sundar's heart clenched. He thought of Elliot sitting alone at the kitchen table, coding his game like it was a shield. He thought of the way the boy flinched when someone raised their voice. The way he never asked for anything, never assumed. He belonged. He realized now it wasn't just hunger or homelessness that shaped Elliot. It was fear. A fear that ran deep. As they left the shelter, Arjun turned to Sundar. What do we do now? Sundar didn't answer right away, because he didn't know. But when they got home, Elliot was gone. His backpack, his tablet, everything. Gone. On the table was a note. Written in neat, shaking letters. Thank you for everything. I didn't mean to bring trouble. This isn't your fight. Please tell Arjun I'm sorry. Sundar held the note in his hands, fingers trembling. And for the first time in years, he felt completely helpless. But he also knew one thing with certainty. He wasn't going to let the world decide who Elliot was. He was going to find him. No matter what. Asterisk. The house was too quiet. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that settles over a home when everyone's asleep or reading or simply content. It was the kind of quiet that follows loss, that stretches and weighs and wraps around your chest so tightly it becomes hard to breathe. Sundar stood by the kitchen counter, staring at the note in his hands for what must have been the 100th time. The paper was thin and creased, like Elliot had folded and unfolded it again and again before finally leaving it behind. The words were simple, but they carried a weight Sundar couldn't ignore. Thank you for everything. I didn't mean to bring trouble. This isn't your fight. Sundar read it again, and this time he noticed something. Elliot hadn't said goodbye. Not really. It wasn't a farewell. It was a retreat. The note wasn't just a message. It was a shield. It was a way of saying, I still care, but I'm scared. And Sundar understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. He called Arjun home from school. When his son walked through the door and saw the empty guest room, his face fell. He stood in the doorway, eyes wide, as if refusing to believe Elliot was actually gone. Why would he leave? Arjun asked, his voice low. We were helping him. Because people who've been hurt too many times don't always trust kindness. Sundar replied. Sometimes it feels safer to disappear than to hope. Arjun didn't respond. He just turned and walked to his room. Sundar sat alone in the living room for a long time, thinking. When you're the CEO of one of the world's biggest tech companies, people assume you have control over your work, your time, your decisions. But in that moment, Sundar felt powerless. No title, no influence. No amount of money could guarantee the safety of one boy who had already vanished once before. And then he remembered. Something the game, the one Elliot had been building. Sundar rushed to his study, opened his laptop, and connected to the house's shared drive. Days earlier, Arjun had backed up a copy of Elliot's code to help him with formatting. It was still there. He opened the folder. Inside. There were pages of Python scripts, lines of logic, complex sequences, written with surprising clarity. But buried within the files was something else, a single text file. Title location log.txt. His heart skipped. He clicked it open. Inside was a string of geotags and timestamps. Sundar leaned closer, scanning them. Each one marked a location where Elliot had connected his tablet to public Wi-Fi over the last few weeks. Starbucks, school, the library. And one more marked. Just 2 hours ago, asterisk, a small community park on the other side of town. Without hesitation. Sundar grabbed his keys. He texted Arjun, "Stay home. I'll find him." But Arjun replied within seconds, "You're not going alone. Wait for me." They arrived. At the park just before dusk. It was quiet, the kind of place where shadows stretched long and the air turned cold quickly once the sun dipped behind the trees. Sundar and Arjun split up, circling the perimeter, scanning benches, pathways, the small playground, the restroom area. And then behind a row of hedges near the old stone fountain. Sundar saw a flash of movement. He stepped closer, heart racing. There, huddled beneath a bench with a blanket pulled over him, was Elliot. Asterisk, his head was down. His hands were wrapped tightly around his knees. He didn't move when Sundar approached, didn't flinch, didn't even seem surprised. Sundar knelt beside him. "I was afraid you wouldn't come." Elliot whispered, not looking up. "You left," Sundar said gently, "but you didn't hide very well." Elliot gave a tired smile. "I didn't want to be found. But I think I wanted to be missed." Sundar felt something tighten in his chest. "You were missed," he said. "And not just by us, by the world. Whether you know it or not, you matter." Elliot finally looked at him. Asterisk. His eyes were tired, rimmed red, but inside them was that same quiet brilliance, dimmed now. "But not gone. You don't have to keep helping me," he said. "I'm not your problem." "You're not a problem," Sundar replied. "You're a person, and people look out for each other. Not because they have to, because it's right." A pause. "Then I didn't steal anything, I know. I just didn't want you or Arjun to get hurt because of me." "We're not afraid of trouble," Sundar said. "We're afraid of losing you." Elliot looked away. His voice dropped. "That guy from the shelter, Jared, he found me once after I left. I ran. I think he might be looking for me again." Sundar froze. This wasn't just a matter of kindness anymore. It was protection. "Did he hurt you?" Sundar asked quietly. Elliot didn't answer. But the silence was enough. Sundar stood slowly and held out his hand. "Come home," he said. Elliot stared at it for a long moment. Then he took it. They returned to the house late that night. Arjun ran to the door the second he heard the key turn, his relief so visible it almost hurt to watch. He didn't ask where Elliot had been. He just hugged him, tightly, no words, and Elliot hugged back, for the first time, without hesitation. The days that followed, Sundar made calls, quietly, carefully. He contacted a lawyer. He spoke to someone he trusted at the local police department. He reached out to a counselor who specialized in trauma for at-risk youth. Every step he took, he made sure Elliot knew he had a voice. He wasn't being rescued. It was being partnered. But then came the call, one that changed everything. Njali answered the phone one evening while Sundar and Arjun were helping Elliot set up a newer laptop donated by a friend. Her voice was calm at first until it wasn't. She came into the room, pale. "That was Detective Ramirez," she said. Elliot's name came up. "Jared has filed a complaint. He says we're harboring a runaway, and he claims Elliot stole from him." Elliot froze. "He's lying?" he whispered. "I know," Sundar said firmly. "But we need to be ready. This won't be easy." "What happens now?" Arjun asked. Sundar looked at them both. "Now we fight," he said. "Not with fists, with truth." But that night, as everyone went to bed, Sundar stayed up. He stared out the window again, watching the moon rise over the hills, because deep in his gut, he knew this fight was going to be bigger than any of them expected. And somewhere out there, Jared was planning his next move, asterisk the days that followed. The detective's phone call were unlike any Sundar had known before. He had faced scrutiny in the public eye. He had been questioned by boards, doubted by investors, challenged by engineers, and pushed to lead through chaos in a world that rarely paused. But this was different. This was personal. It wasn't about a product or a press release or the trajectory of a billion-dollar company. It was about a boy. A boy who sat quietly on their living room floor, barefoot, sketching out game levels, on a yellow notepad with the same focus most kids save for phones or video games. Elliot didn't talk much that week. He didn't complain. He didn't ask what would happen next. But the silence around him grew heavier each day, as if he were bracing for something inevitable, like standing on a train track, waiting for the rumble of steel in the distance. Sundar watched him, often from the kitchen or the hallway, feeling a helplessness that gnawed at the edges of his calm. Anjali tried to keep the home steady. She cooked meals with quiet hands, her expressions unreadable. She had always been the anchor of the family, the one who sensed when Sundar was stretching too thin, who knew when Arjun needed space, who kept joy blooming even in silence. But now, even she carried a weight in her eyes. "I spoke to the lawyer," she said one evening as they stood by the sink. "He says we may need to prepare for social services to get involved. If Jared pushes hard enough, they might try to remove Elliot, say we didn't go through the right process." Sundar's hand tightened around the glass he was drying. "Remove? Him and send him where?" he asked. "There's no one. No safe place. That man shouldn't even be near children." "You know how the system works?" she replied softly. "What's right doesn't always win." Sundar didn't sleep much that night. Instead, he sat by his laptop, scrolling through old files, searching through public databases, looking up anything he could find on Jared Lund. He found articles. He found vague mentions. But no arrests. No solid charges, just rumors, whispers, trails gone cold. It was the kind of pattern Sundar had learned to recognize. Someone who knew how to slip through cracks. But Elliot had slipped through too many already. They weren't going to let it happen again. The next morning, Sundar asked Elliot to come with him to his office. Elliot hesitated. "Won't that make people talk?" "Let them," Sundar said. "You deserve to be seen." The Google campus was buzzing, as always. But when Sundar walked in with Elliot beside him, jeans still frayed, hoodie zipped up to the chin heads, turned. Some smiled politely. Others stared longer than they should have. They rode the elevator in silence. When they reached Sundar's floor, he guided Elliot into a meeting room with wide windows and a whiteboard that stretched across the wall. "I want you to show me your game," Sundar said. Elliot blinked. "Why?" "Because you built something, and builders deserve to be heard." Hesitantly, Elliot pulled out his files. For the next 40 minutes, Sundar watched, amazed, as Elliot walked him through the structure of the code, the way each level taught users something without making it feel like school, how failure triggered subtle animations, not punishment, how success unlocked brief messages of encouragement. "You're getting there, in single quotes, to give up. You're not broken. You're building. You wrote this?" Sundar asked quietly. Elliot nodded. "I wanted to help people like me. People who don't learn like everyone else." People who need someone to believe in them, even if it's just a message on a screen. Sundar sat back in his chair, stunned. Dot, the boy wasn't just coding. He was healing Dot with every line of logic, every pixel. He was rebuilding something inside himself that the world had tried to erase. You need to present this, Sundar said. Not just to me, to people who can help take it further. Why would anyone listen to me? Elliot asked. Because they listened to me, Sundar replied. And I was just a boy from Chennai with a dream and a $20 notebook. Elliot didn't smile, but his eyes brightened just slightly. When they returned home, a police car was parked outside. Arjun stood on the porch, pale, holding the door halfway open. They're here for Elliot, he said. Inside. A tall woman in plain clothes introduced herself. I'm caseworker Bryant, she said. We've received a formal complaint about this household and your guest. Sundar stood straight, calm but firm. You mean Elliot? We're conducting an assessment, she said. There have been concerns raised about his safety and the legality of his stay here. By who? Sundar asked, though he already knew the answer. The complaint was anonymous. Elliot stepped forward. I want to stay, he said, voice low but steady. Please don't make me go back out there. Caseworker Bryant looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned back to Sundar. We'll need to evaluate. Check on his past. Speak with you again soon. But for now, he can stay. They left with no promises, no protection. Just another waiting period. The system was turning its wheels. That night, Elliot couldn't eat. He sat in the hallway outside, his room back against the wall. Knees pulled to his chest. Arjun joined him after a while. They didn't say much, but Arjun reached into his pocket and handed Elliot something small. A folded up paper crane. My mom taught me how to make them, he said. She says when you fold 1,000, you get a wish. How many have you made? 1. Arjun smiled. But I figured I'd start with you. Elliot took it, eyes wet. And Sundar, watching from the hallway, knew that no matter how this ended, something real had already happened here. Something worth protecting. But the next morning, everything changed again. A brick was thrown through their front window. No note. Just shattered glass. And a message that didn't need to be spoken out loud. Someone didn't want Elliot here. Someone was watching. Asterisk. The brick had landed just inches from where Elliot had fallen asleep the night before. They found him curled up on the living room couch, wrapped in an old quilt Angeli had stitched herself years ago, now covered with specks of broken cloth. When Sundar reached him, his eyes were open wide and stunned, but not panicked. Not anymore. He looked tired, not just from lack of sleep, but from the exhaustion of being afraid too many times and too many places. Outside, the early morning sun was beginning to rise, but the light felt wrong. Fractured. It poured through. A broken window like a wound. Angeli stood silently beside the kitchen table. Her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and calm as she spoke to the police. Her other hand trembled slightly, clenching and unclenching the fabric of her robe. Arjun had come running when he heard the crash, his expression halfway between fear and fury. No one knew who had thrown the brick, but everyone knew why. Sundar crouched next to Elliot, brushing glass from the floor, careful not to touch the boy too suddenly. Are you hurt? Yes. Asterisk. Elliot shook his head. No, just scared. That's allowed, Sundar said. But we're not going to let fear decide what happens next. Elliot looked at him, then really looked. And something shifted, not trust, not fully, but the beginning of it. Like a door cracking open after years of being shut tight. Asterisk. The officers came quickly, took photos, asked questions, wrote reports. But Sundar knew the look in their eyes. Sympathy, not strategy. They wouldn't find the person who did this. Or if they did, it would be too late. We'll increase patrols. Near your home, one officer said before leaving. But until we get a name, there's not much else we can do. Sundar thanked them, but inside he felt the sharp edge of frustration. He had spent his life believing in systems that could be improved, optimized, corrected. But this wasn't a system problem. This was personal. Someone out there had made it clear Elliot wasn't welcome. And they were willing to scare a family to make that known. After the officers left, the family gathered around the table. There were no headlines, no press coverage, no statements from spokespeople. Just 4 people in a kitchen trying to decide how to protect one boy from a past that wouldn't let him go. I should leave, Elliot said quietly. This keeps getting worse. No, Arjun said sharply. You're not the problem. Whoever's doing this is. Elliot lowered his eyes. But they're doing it because of me. And they're wrong, Sundar said. You being here, it matters. Why? Elliot asked, his voice cracking for the first time. I'm not family. I'm not anyone. I don't belong here. Sundar leaned forward, his tone calm but fierce. Listen to me. Families aren't always blood. Sometimes they're built by choice, by time, by truth. And if someone wants to come after you, they'll have to go through me first. And I don't scare easily. Elliot blinked fast, swallowing hard. Anjali placed a hand on his shoulder. We're not asking you to fight alone, she said. We're standing with you. In the days that followed, the family changed their routine. Sundar adjusted his work schedule, working remotely more often. Arjun stayed close to Elliot at school, never letting him walk the halls alone. Anjali coordinated with local community leaders, quietly, carefully making sure there were eyes and ears in places where threats might try to hide, and yet tension still clung to every corner of the house. Then something unexpected happened. A package arrived. Small, brown, no return label. Arjun opened it. Inside was a flash drive. Just that. No message, no sender. Just the plastic weight of memory waiting to be unlocked. They stared at it in silence. Do we plug it in? Arjun asked. Elliot stepped back, visibly shaken. I think it's from him. Sundar turned the drive over in. His fingers. Oh, be careful. I'll open it in his sandbox. They loaded the contents onto an isolated device. At first, it looked harmless. Just a single video file. Sundar clicked play. The footage was grainy. A parking lot late at night. Security cam angle. A figure, Elliot, sitting on a curb. And then another man approaching. Tall, older, voice distorted by distance. That's Jared, Elliot said. Voice cold. In the footage. The man knelt beside Elliot, speaking softly. Too softly to hear. He reached into his coat, handed Elliot something. The boy flinched. And then ran. The man stood, watching. Never moved. The video ended. No violence. No direct threat, but the message was clear. We see you. Sundar sat back. His fingers laced together tightly. He's playing a game, Sundar said. He's trying to make you run. Scare you out of safety? He won't stop, Elliot whispered. He's going to keep coming. Then we get ahead of him, Sundar replied. We tell the truth before he can twist it. We take this to the school, to the shelter, to the police. We make sure everyone knows your side of the story. No one listens to kids like me, Elliot said. I'm just some homeless dropout with no records. No parents, no proof. Sundar shook his head. You're not invisible anymore. That night, Sundar made a decision. The next morning, he reached out to someone in the press. Not a big outlet, not a viral journalist. Just a quiet, careful voice he trusted. Someone who valued truth over scandal. Together, they wrote a story, not about Google, not about CEOs or tech companies. A story about a boy. About resilience, injustice, and hope. They changed names for protection, but the heart of the story was clear. And within days, it spread. Slowly at first, quietly. But then something remarkable happened. Emails came in. From teachers, from former shelter volunteers, from others who had crossed paths with Jared, people who hadn't spoken out before, but now felt like they could. One message read, I saw him touch a student at the shelter. She told me he made her feel unsafe. I should have done more. I'm sorry, but I'll speak now. Another said, my nephew ran from that man too. We couldn't prove anything, but we always believed him. Thank you for believing, Elliot. The dam was breaking. The truth, long buried, was starting to rise, but then came the knock at the door. Not the police, not the press, someone else, Elliot opened it, and froze, standing on the porch. Was a woman, then. Worn, but familiar, her voice broke the silence. Elliot, baby. It's me. His mother, alive, but not alone, behind her stood a man. A man Elliot knew too well, Jared, asterisk. The doorway held two ghosts, one from the past Elliot had never truly escaped, and one he had quietly hoped might one day return. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at the woman in front of him, his mother. Her face was thinner than he remembered, drawn and shadowed with something that looked like guilt, maybe shame. Her eyes flickered from his to the floor, and back again, unable to hold still. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out at first, and behind her stood the man who had haunted Elliot's sleep since he was 12, Jared, He wasn't smiling. He didn't look angry. He just looked entitled, as if this visit, this reappearance into a life he had broken, was not only allowed, but owed to him. Elliot, his mother finally said, voice shaking. I know this is a shock, but I came to take you home. Home. The word hit harder than any threat ever could. Because it wasn't true. It had never been true. Behind Elliot, Arjun and Sundar rushed to the door. Sundar stepped in front of Elliot immediately, instinctively. His body became a wall. Who are you? Sundar asked, not harshly but without warmth. I'm his mother. She replied quickly, I came to get my son. And I'm calling the police, Sundar said, already pulling out his phone. Because you brought a known predator to my doorstep. Jared raised his hand slowly, as if to appear calm. We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to talk. You have no legal rights to him, Sundar said firmly. And you have no right to be near this home. Elliot's mother stepped forward. Please, just give us a minute. I didn't know what was happening. I was in a bad place. I left because I thought he'd be safer without me. Elliot's voice was quiet, almost too quiet. He left me. With him, his mother looked down. I didn't know. You knew, Elliot whispered. You saw it, and you let it happen. The silence that followed was not still. It cracked like ice. And then JAL. I appeared behind Sundar. A phone to her ear. They're on their way, she said calmly. Jared took a step back. This isn't over. He muttered. You're right, Sundar said. It's just beginning. And this time, you'll face the truth. The police arrived minutes later. Jared tried to explain himself. He was calm, smooth, practiced. But it didn't matter. Sundar showed them the video. Arjun handed over the flash drive. Elliot gave his statement, his voice trembling but unbroken. And one of the officers recognized Jared from a prior case. They took him into custody. His mother didn't resist. She cried as they put Jared in the car. But Elliot didn't. He stood there, unmoving, eyes wide, mouth pressed shut as the sirens faded. Sundar knelt beside him. You don't have to be okay right now, he said. You just have to know you're not alone. And for the first time, Elliot allowed himself to fall forward into Sundar's arms, into safety, into something real. He sobbed not like a child, but like someone who had carried too much weight for too long, and finally, had been given permission to let go. The weeks that followed were filled with healing, but also uncertainty. The media got wind of the story. Small at first, then larger. Headlines danced around the truth. Tech CEO shelters homeless teen. Abuse survivor finally safe. System failure meets personal courage. Some criticized Sundar for letting Elliot in without legal process. Others called him a hero. But Sundar ignored all of it. His focus was on Elliot. Asterisk therapy sessions began, gentle ones. Trauma-informed, guided by people who didn't push, didn't assume, didn't label. The court appointed a guardian ad litem to oversee Elliot's welfare. And Sundar petitioned quietly, carefully, with the best lawyers money couldn't buy, but compassion could find for long-term. Guardianship, not adoption, not replacement, Just presence. A promise. Elliot returned to school slowly. He still avoided loud hallways and sudden movements, but he had one thing now that made it possible. He had Arjun always walking beside him, always watching his back. And one afternoon, something changed. A teacher pulled Sundar aside at a school event. "We've been reviewing Elliot's game project," she said. "He's entered it into the state-level youth coding competition." Sundar blinked. "He never told me." "He didn't want pressure," the teacher smiled. "But he's a finalist." Later that night, Sundar brought it up gently as they sat on the porch, just him and Elliot, watching the sun dip behind the trees. "I heard about the competition," he said. Elliot shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't sure it was good enough." "You don't have to be sure," Sundar said. "You just have to try." Elliot looked out at the darkening sky. "I still feel broken sometimes," he said quietly. "Like even when it's quiet, the noise is still inside me." Sundar didn't rush to answer.